Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Will-o'-the-Wisps. Not just a Pokemon move or an enemy from Oblivion. Has anyone else had any experience with this phenomenon? One time I was walking in the woods just before dawn, very dark, pitch black, on Long Island. I'm weird, I do this a lot. I like to listen to music there before the sun comes up. I know these woods like the back of my hand, and I could walk these paths blindfolded. It was about 5 minutes into my usual walk, very close to the entrance, and as I'm walking off on a path that I don't usually take, the less established path, thick with plants, I see floating still 3 or 4 feet off the ground, maybe 30 feet away, a diffuse, cloudy ball of light. Imagine a single Christmas light on a very foggy day, perfectly pale white. That's what it looked like, exactly like the picture. It was also silent. It had the appearance of an orb that was brightest at the center and gradually faded as it radiated outward. It had a radius of a few inches all around, maybe 6 inches in diameter. It was not foggy that day, but the glow it cast was exactly how you would expect a small light to appear in a dense fog. Brightest in the center, fading as it approached the edge. And it was not very bright, but it stood in stark contrast to the pitch black of the night, and for how bright it was, its glow wasn't reflected on any surface around it as you would expect to see. It was floating a few inches from a wooden post, a trail marker, but the post and the leaves around it remained dark like it wasn't even there. I was in a perfectly normal and sober state of mind. It was an average day in every sense. I wasn't tired, hungry, or distressed in any way, and I'm not a mystical person. I'm very skeptical. I stood there looking at it for a relatively long time, at least 20 seconds, long enough to have these exact thoughts. What is that? I'm definitely seeing this, right? Yes. I'm positively seeing an unearthly, motionless orb of light floating right there. I'm going to investigate. I stepped towards the light, and at that instant, it was gone. The very moment I made the conscious decision to go and inspect it, it vanished, just like a light bulb turning off all at once. Now, when I first happened upon the light, I didn't see it suddenly appear. It could have been floating there hours before I came, for all I know. To be specific, this was at Muttontown Preserve in East Norwich, Long Island, a nature preserve which has many scattered swamps and streams. However, the exact spot where I saw it was not in a swamp, but there was one small stream maybe 50 feet away tops. The whole area is thick with marsh throughout. The entire preserve could be considered swampland. In my research, I've come to the conclusion that a will-o'-the-wisp is exactly what I saw. It matches my description to a T. Right down to the fact that it disappeared the moment I stepped towards it. It didn't scare me at all, but for the rest of my walk, it's all I could think about. I've never had any other unexplainable paranormal experience before or since, but I really hope to one day see it again. I won't make the mistake of stepping towards it next time. Tell me if you have ever experienced something similar, or what you think this light was.
I saw this phenomenon once. I lived in a cottage close to a gulch in a jungle-like climate on Maui. One day I was called outside by my partner because he was seeing lots of lights outside. When I joined him, I was skeptical at first. I thought it was just the stars wearing through the trees at first, and maybe some of them were. The more I looked, the more they slowly phased in and out closer and closer. I saw some that appeared to be 5 feet away, but when I walked up to them, they would disappear like a mirage or something. Almost like a different layer of reality that I couldn't physically touch. One orb slowly phased in at the peak of our cottage. No trees behind it, just a solid cottage. That's when I knew I wasn't seeing stars. I wanted to believe they were fireflies, but I've seen fireflies before, and these didn't move like them. Pretty cool experience, just very perplexing.
Ever since I was young, I was always told stories of the Elmo, or St. Elmo's fire, often described as a ball of bluish or white flame. Curiously, it is not hot in any way. Some say it is the spirits of men who have died near a body of water or during heavy rains. Others say it's the souls of children who were not baptized, leading those who follow it to their doom. I didn't really heed these stories. Not until one night while I was on campus, anyway. It was the middle of July. I just finished my assignments and was packing up to go home. All was normal. I've walked home before, memorized each street like it was the back of my hand, but when I reached the old bus stop near my school, I saw it. A ball of flame, just floating. I was dumbstruck. I mean, I've heard the stories, the legends, but that doesn't prepare you when you see it in person. I was like in a trance, like I had the sudden urge to follow it. But I remembered what my Lolo and Lola always told me. Pag may makita ka na bola ng apoy iho, baliktarin mo ang mga damit mo para lumayas yung masamang elemento. If you ever see a ball of fire, aho, turn your clothes inside out, so the bad element leaves. I quickly turned my clothes inside out, even my underwear. When I looked back at the ball, it was gone. Just vanished right before my eyes. I quickly ran home, not caring about the darkness. I just wanted to get back home safe. When I got home, I quickly called my mom and dad, screaming in the middle of the night. They came running down the stairs, asking what the hell happened and why my clothes were inside out. I quickly explained all that I saw, the ball of flame, and how I remembered my grandparents' warnings. They hugged me tightly. My mom said I was lucky, while my dad ran for the neighborhood albulario, medicine man, and had me check if I had any lingering bad spirits. All was fine. I was home. Though when I lay in bed at night, I sometimes see light shining through my windows. Sometimes it's just cars passing by. But I always cover myself with my sheets, never knowing if the Santelmo would come back for me.
I don't know the true story behind this light because there are so many variations. Supposedly in the 1800s in Bingham, South Carolina, a man named John or Bill was killed by a train one night while carrying a lantern. His spirit is walking around in the area, and the light that you see swinging is his lantern. Many people around my region have been talking about this light for years, and I've been wanting to go see it for a long time. The people that see it say that you call out the man's name, then the light will appear after some time and chase you. So one night I finally went to see for myself. Around 7 p.m. on this night, my two friends and I arrived there. The site we went to, there's supposed to be about 3 points in the area where you can see it, is down a 1-mile dirt road called South Butler Road, then out in front of a huge cornfield. So first let me tell you about the area. It's disturbing. Not to sensationalize anything, but it's eerie out there. It was cloudy that particular night, and being out in an isolated area surrounded by woods, it was unnaturally dark. Once we reached the last cornfield, we got out of my friend's truck and scanned the area. Then after about 3 minutes of trying to pull ourselves together, I suggested that we do what the legend said and call out his name, John Bingham or Bill Bingham. We did that several times real loud until it echoed out into the woods. A few minutes later, we looked out into the field near the edge of the woods and saw a very faint flash. We had to look carefully for several minutes because it wasn't an ordinary light and it was hard to see. We thought that the dark was playing tricks on our eyes. When we finally realized what it was, we noticed that it was coming toward us from the edge of the woods to out in the middle of the field. Within seconds, it was getting closer and closer. When we saw that, we ran back to the truck and were about to drive off, but we decided that we should do it again for the thrill. So we got back out and called his name again. This time, it took about 5 minutes or so before the light came out, and it did the same thing, except moving a little faster this time around. We ran to the truck again and waited about 10 minutes. Then we decided to see it a third time. However, we saw a truck coming far up the road, so we got out of there because we didn't know who it was. The light didn't glow like a normal light does. It was just a soft, faint blue-cream ball. It showed itself in flashes like a radio tower light. As a matter of fact, there are actually a few out there in the distance, and they will confuse you at first and move in an erratic side-to-side motion, which will freak you out in itself. It flashes in random places, but still in a swinging motion. Another point, the light doesn't just float in the air at random heights. I noticed that it floats at a steady 5 feet or so I'm guessing that is how tall the man was. I mean, I just don't understand the true nature behind this light, but all I know is that it's out there. If you just happen to be walking in that area at night, which I doubt anyone would be as creepy as it is, and you see that thing coming, it would freak you out. It's not like some horror film type of thing, but it's really freaky. That was my first encounter. I went back and saw it a second time. This time around, it was just one friend and I. The moon was full and bright on this particular night. My friend and I stayed out in the area for maybe a half hour calling it. We even went as far as cussing at it, but it did not come out regardless. I told my friend about this path that is supposed to be in the middle of the field and leads back up into the woods near where the man was supposedly killed, so we finally got the guts to walk the path. We called the light all the while thinking that it would come out as we were closer, but it still didn't appear. We decided to turn around about halfway and walk to the other side of the field. When we got all the way to the other side and about halfway up, we saw the light coming toward us in the middle of the field, but it disappeared and would not come out again. Strange. That was my second encounter. At this time of writing this post, I have since been out there a good 16 times between 2010 to 2014, but only saw it those first 2 times. After doing extensive research on the history behind this light over the past few years, I have come to the conclusion that the story behind it may be fabricated. While the light is indeed real, as I have seen it twice, the story behind it is also the same story behind other ghost light phenomena in South Carolina. The locations are all different, but they all have in common the same or similar story about a man walking around with a lantern and was beheaded by an oncoming train one night, so his spirit is now looking for his head, and the light is his lantern. It is disappointing to know that this is only a widespread urban legend used by people to describe phenomena they can't explain. However, the fact remains that the light phenomena does exist, but I have yet to explain what it is. It was once thought to be swamp gas or ball lightning, but due to the location of the sightings, which is mainly out in the middle of the field, although there are other points around that area where folks claim to have seen it, the possibility of swamp gas and ball lightning are ruled out. Now, it is important to note that there used to be a railroad that once ran right through that area to take people to a resort back in the 1800s or so, but the resort and the railroad tracks are long gone. It is also important to note that there is indeed a swamp in that area, and I've been to it personally, but it is not close to the field where the light is often seen. Also ruling out the possibility of it being swamp gas or ball lightning is the fact that the light is shown to have intelligence, because it comes out when you call it, although not every time. It also seems to be drawn to fear, at least from my experience. My first time going out there, I was almost terrified, and the sheer darkness and remoteness of the area only made it worse. My first night out there, I was chased by it twice. The other times going out there, I braved up to it and haven't seen it since. All of this considered is the reason why I think it's definitely a spirit. Another interesting fact to point out is that after doing some research online, I came across this rare book about a guy named Carly Wiggins, who was also doing research on the light. He said he came across an elderly lady in the area who heard about a man named Wylam Wynn, who was indeed killed by a train that ran through the area back in the day. The particular section can be found via this link on page 116, linked below. All in all, I think no one will ever know the true nature behind the Bingham light, but nonetheless it remains a cool thing to go see when you want to get freaked out for a night.
As we are on /x/ I believe you guys wish to hear some creepy stories. This was told to me by my father when I was young. My father is from Kainuu, one of the most sparsely populated and remote parts of Finland where the old beliefs persisted well into the 20th century. Be a girl in the 19th century. Be walking home from a local dance. The woods are dark and silent with no soul to be heard. The girl picks up her pace as a flicker through the trees catches her eyes. A green fire lit between some high rocks. She instantly recognizes this as a will-o-wisp. During the War of Greater Wrath, the people fled the Russian invaders into the woods, leaving their valuables buried in the ground. To protect the treasures, spirits were summoned that would present themselves as ghastly fires. She rushes to the fire and starts digging. She digs and digs but can't find any treasure. At this point, she's neck-deep into the ground. Suddenly, a voice booms from underground. 7 feet deeper, 7 feet under, 7 lives from the taker and 7 for the garter. Rough translation. She comes to the grim realization. A sacrifice must be made in order to gain the treasure. She's been digging a grave. She hops out of the pit and bolts home. She glances behind her and sees the fire erupting and then going out. No treasure was ever found on the spot, and the will-o-wisp wasn't seen again.
Not too far from my hometown is a small community out in the bush, or boondocks as many of you may say, called Bingham. For almost 200 years it has been known that Bingham has had a paranormal phenomena, popularly known as the Bingham Light. No one as of yet can explain what it really is, but there have been numerous folk legends and theories abound to go along with the sightings that witnesses have claimed to have seen over the years. Okay, assuming that you have read that story, I'm going to mention that since my first 2 encounters of seeing the light in 2010, I have since been out there between 30, 40 times, mostly alone, but each time I was only met with disappointment. However, tonight was a different story. It's a Friday night and I didn't feel like sitting home, but unfortunately there was really nothing else better to do at that particular time, so I went riding around town solo just to see what was going on. After dark, I decided for the hell of it that I would take a ride out to Bingham just to see if I can see this light again by chance. Around 9:30 p.m., I arrived at the famous location in front of the huge cornfield. I stepped out of the car with a nonchalant feeling that I would just be disappointed as usual, so I just casually called out to the light. For about 10 minutes or so, just an estimate, I stood in the dark yelling loudly out into the distance, hearing my voice echo across the huge field and into the surrounding woods. It was dark and cloudy tonight, but there was just enough illumination from the hidden moon behind the clouds to allow you to see the surroundings. As I stood there peering into the darkness, there were several times when I thought I saw something out in the distance, but I've been there enough times to know by now that the dark can play tricks on your eyes out there, so I just wanted to be sure. I waited for several more minutes as I continued to call the light. A few minutes later, I saw a very soft and pale illumination in the field, and then it disappeared. I knew right then that was it. A few seconds later, the illumination reappeared, moving fast towards me. As the light doesn't glow anything around it and is very faint, it managed to get within several yards away from me without me even realizing it. I thought that by going out there so many times that I officially braved up to the light, but upon seeing that, my blood just froze, and I felt this strong tingle go down my spine. Something just came over me and I said, "Oh shit." I couldn't stand the fear any longer as I saw how it was flashing side to side like that. Its movement just overwhelmed me, and I took off running to the car and drove off as quickly as I could. All at once I was scared yet happy, because I finally saw the light again after so many times over the past few years of trying with no avail. Apart from that though, there really isn't much more that I can add. My sentiments remain the same from the first 2 times that I saw it, but explaining what it is will always remain a mystery.
Out at Friend's farm back in high school, it's nighttime. Me and my friend N harassed our other friend K to let us borrow his dad's truck. K had been drinking and couldn't drive, but N and I were sober still, so he lets us. N is driving. We stopped after driving for about a minute. I'm just kind of looking around, enjoying the eerie treetops and general scenery. Rural area, but I'm a city boy, so I don't often see stars this bright. It's nice. Hear N ask, "The hell is that?" I looked directly ahead, nothing obvious, but down the road a ways, where the north-south road we were on forked into east-west, it looked like a faint orange glow was coming from around the tree bend. Woods are thick, so we drive closer to get a better look, thinking someone's shit might be on fire. Get around the bend, and there's nothing. Now the glow is coming from around the next bend. We follow. Same thing again. At this point, I finally remember what anglerfish are, how they lure their prey. Don't tell N, just tell him fuck it, let's go back. I'm bored. Any clue what it was?
Generally, will-o-wisp are forest sort of spirits, or fae, that lure people with lights into the forest. The will-o'-the-wisp was sometimes called ignis fatuus, a Latin phrase meaning foolish fire. That's because the fire was not real, only an illusion. The will-o'-the-wisp could appear as a flickering flame in the moors or wooded areas, or as a floating ball of blue-green light near swamps, bogs, or marshes. Some accounts of will-o'-the-wisp sightings claim the light was so bright that it caused people to squint. Other times, the lights were said to be so dim that they could barely be seen. This was, of course, before glasses were invented, so we take such accounts with a grain of salt. According to most legends, the will-o'-the-wisp initially appears harmless or even playful, but this is a dirty trick. They were really malevolent, it was said, and served as a device to lure travelers off the beaten path and into danger. On the other hand, some stories claim that the will-o'-the-wisp led them to the fairy kingdom. So hey, it was a 50 shot at partying with sparkle people or certain death. Perhaps some of the ancient bodies found in England's bogs were people who followed a will-o'-the-wisp away from the well-established path and into a bog or pit. Other travelers simply vanished and were never seen again.
I haven't posted on this site in a long time, mainly because I haven't had any recent experiences aside from maybe one earlier this year, or last year I think. However, that changed just this past Halloween, so I just wanted to give an update with another experience. I went out to the community of Bingham to attempt to see the light this past Halloween. It was obviously the perfect time to go. I was expecting to see a crowd of people out there given the occasion, but to my surprise I only saw one or two other cars, and they were only driving through the location and then left. By the time I had gotten down the mile-long dirt road, South Butler Road, I was the only one out there. Nothing spectacular happened that night. I just got out of the car and did the usual call, "Bingham Light, come out." As always, it was pretty creepy out there, but I had been out there so many times that I became quite accustomed to it by now. I think the scariest part about being out there is the darkness itself, along with the remoteness of the area. The light in and of itself is nothing scary. It's just knowing what it is that gets to you. The crops in the field had grown up to maybe a foot, and I noticed there were two cotton trucks parked on opposite sides of the field. I stood out there maybe 20-something minutes estimate, calling the light and looking around me at all times. I asked it to reveal itself in a way that wouldn't scare me. It wasn't much long after that when I noticed right dead in the middle of the field, I saw a faint flash low to the ground. It took a second for my eyes to really adjust to what I was looking at, but given my previous experiences, I quickly realized that was the light. It was moving towards me at a fairly quick pace in its usual side-to-side motion. Within seconds, it was only a few yards away from me. I quickly ran to my car and tore out of there. The thing about this light is that it's so faint that you really don't realize what you're seeing until it's nearly right up on you. That's the scary part about it. A lot of people, and I do mean a lot, have exaggerated the appearance of the light over the years, but on the handful of occasions I've seen the light, it showed itself as a soft, faint bluish illumination that flashed side to side. Never anything like a hard and bright light, like car lights or a flame. It's not even as bright as a firefly illumination, and there are tons of those out there in the warm months, so that alone has unknowingly confused many, I'm sure. But I digress at this point. Anyway, I left South Butler Road and took a left onto Highway 34 to drive another mile or so around to Reedy Springs Court, which is another dirt road. The whole area is connected, so Reedy Springs Court runs parallel to South Butler Road. Imagine something along the lines of a big rectangle and you sorta got the picture. I got down Reedy Springs Court, turned my car around and parked at the point where the two dirt roads intersect. At first I got out of the car and made the call, but it began to dawn on me just how creepy that area was. I thought the area around the crop field on South Butler Road was creepy, but Reedy Springs Court is just outright dreadful on a dark night. I couldn't stand out there any longer. I quickly got back in my car and rolled the passenger window down and made the call to the light. I made sure to look around me at all times, as that particular area is where the light is known to come up on you close and fast, though it has never happened to me yet. After several minutes, I didn't see anything, and I wasn't about to wait around much longer either. I was getting creeped out by the minute, so I had to go. Although not much happened that night, I can say that I did finally get to see the light again after so long. After all, considering I had over 50-something visits, I've only seen the light maybe 5, 6 times in the span of 10 years.
I might have something. A friend of mine and I also like to take night walks to the local forest, which we both also know by heart. So pitch black is how we prefer to walk. Okay, so we decided to take some flutes and other such instruments for the walk. Must have been way past midnight before we got to the biggest boulder in the whole forest. It was from that stone we started to play. My friend wasn't really feeling like playing after some time. I was playing solo. Warmed up, I could play very loud and clean. Thought it would be funny to try and play a Summon Spirits melody, going strong. Trying only to mess with my friend, I began to tell him that they are coming. Reminder, it's pitch black, middle of the forest, not on trail, let's say around 1 a.m. Suddenly, both saw a moving orb of bluish light. Hard to tell how far, maybe 50, 60 feet, and it was moving in our direction from even deeper parts of the forest. We both instantly panic, quickly gather our things and made a run for it. I don't know why, but we both thought it's the forester, because we were too loud, and only after we got safe we figured how stupid it was to think that. It was no flashlight, there is no forester here. And it was from deep within the forest. I still have no idea what it was. My friend is rationalizing it as a LED light on a random camper or a hobo sleeping there. But I don't think that makes any sense. If it was a human, he must have heard us, so why expose himself with a bland light like that? The light itself was kind of like you described and gave no light radius around. The worst thing about an experience like that is that none of your friends believe you. They all said we were imagining things, or that it was a hobo with an LED camping in the forest.
Yeah, truth. To respond to OP, I encountered them twice in the last 5 years. In 2020, I was having a smoke outside my house a few months after my girlfriend roped herself. I saw a light as I stood up and it spun over my shoulder, and as I turned to look at it, I blacked out. My head smacking the ground as it bounced on the dirt of an empty lot on the other side of the bushes at the edge of my yard woke me. I had no idea where I even was, and my head was full of thorns because the bushes are acacia. I still have scabs that bleed from this. About a year later, I was walking a park nearby at night, and an orb followed me. I pretended not to notice, like it was a stranger staring at me on a bus, and it went away, but I clearly saw the blue-greenish light it made cast upon the surrounding park. A year after, this was summer of 23, I was camping. My aunt just died a week earlier. I took some mushrooms, not too many though, maybe 2 grams. I'm experienced and have never had psychedelic hallucinations, and was grieving by the waterfall near my very private, very remote primitive campground, and I saw orbs across the river. I pretended not to notice, but felt them luring me. They wanted me to cross a swift, deep, over 40-ish feet, river in a canyon with 30-foot stone walls and scamper up a crazy incline to find them. When my friend came down to hang out a moment away from camp, he saw them too. After everyone went to sleep, the spirit of my friend's dead witch mother came to speak to me. She became the huge Douglas fir above me. As we spoke, centipedes and millipedes crawled out of the forest and swarmed me. I let them, thinking, these poor wretches are ugly and misunderstood. Today, I believe they are fallen angels, demons. These experiences Christianstead me. They seek to fool us. They LARP as the dead, Bigfoot, UFOs, all that. They're the same as they have always been. They're demonic. They're jinn. Just to follow up, the orbs I saw produced a very unearthly kind of radiance pitch. The source of the light appeared to be orbs of blue-green plasma, maybe 6, 9 inches in diameter, and fluctuating. But they illuminated an area with a radius of maybe 25 feet in an entirely unnatural way. The light hue was golden blue-green, and the things in the radius cast no shadows. Even the surfaces of trees and grass appeared with a kind of chiaroscuro radiance. Not a single shadow fell in that radius. It was like the source of the light was the area itself, falling within the radius. Really spooky, actually. And this is true all the time I saw the orbs. They felt benevolent at the time, like I felt maybe they were dead spirits or friendly sprites. I discovered the existence of the demonic denizens of the Infernal Empire last year, after reading just about everything you can imagine and realizing that the elephant in the room is, and always has been, God. These are demonic manifestations. I truly believe this. They have motives, and there is a very specific reason they show themselves to you, and it has to do with open receptivity. Wanting to see them is lightly receptive, but really being, in a word, gullible and childlike in your curiosity is a real open flank. If you seriously want to experience these demonic manifestations, like Bigfoot, what I will tell you here is very simple. Listen carefully. Go camping in a dispersed or primitive campsite far from other campers, a mile at least, or just trailblaze and camp dispersed out in open nature. Go out alone sometime after you arrive and say loudly, in private from other people, "I accept you, Sasquatch. I invite you in and welcome you to visit me tonight." Don't build a fire if you can help it. Make sure all light sources are extinguished and there is no fire when the sun sets. If you're in a group, leave your friends by about 100 to 200 yards. Find a place to put your bed kit right on the ground. Sleep like that, on the ground with no fire, alone, deep in the spooky fucking woods, out where you appear visible. Wait, a lot happens. First, you will hear really creepy shit like stick Indians. For those unfamiliar, it will sound like all manner of crazy things happening out in those woods. You may hear kids playing. You may hear eerie, festive music and laughter. You may hear heavy footsteps. It gets very, very weird. Do not leave your sleeping bag. You will have an encounter you will not forget, and they will continue to visit you even after you go home. They will begin to demonstrate weird paranormal powers. They will tell you their names with their minds. You will begin to realize at this point how totally demonic this narrative begins to sound. If you are weak-minded, you will become obsessed with Ape Man Magic Friend. You see these loons all over Bigfoot interest groups. Obsession is perhaps the most consistent sign of demonic manipulation in humans. It is not in the nature of man to obsess. Many people find God, however, through such encounters. The important part to meet a creature is to invite it into your heart, like a demon. No shit. I don't recommend it, but there you have it. If you want to prove Bigfoot to yourself, I just gave you the technology.
Where did all this happen? It sounds like a strange place in general.
Oregon, specifically in the South Umpqua.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.